What's up, everybody? Welcome to this Tuesday edition of the Pack-A-Day podcast here on YouTube. My name's Andy Herman. Thanks so much for joining me. Yesterday, I went through some of the things that I thought were disappointing about the Packers game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I ended on a positive note, and I mentioned that I'm still very bullish on this Packers team and what they can do this season, which I still very much feel this way. However, I thought today it would at least be of interest to break down what my concerns are with this Packers team and what they're going to have to do to overcome some of these concerns to really make it that they are a championship contender at the end of this season. Every team has some level of question mark on it, even the Chiefs and the Seahawks, and no matter who is playing right now in October, there's question marks surrounding that team, and they have to get better and evolve as the season progresses if they want to win a championship. For Green Bay, that's no different, and we got a very good look at that this past Sunday against Tampa Bay. So today I'm going to be going through my 5 concerns that I have that Green Bay is going to have to address or get better at as the season goes along if they do want to have those championship aspirations, which, again, in my opinion, I think they very much do. I think they very much can, but they do have some questions that they have to answer. These aren't in any particular order. I'm not ranking them 1 to 5. I'm just going through my 5 overall concerns for this Packers team as we move forward. Number 1, can this Packers offense function when it's not ideal conditions? And I don't mean weather conditions. I mean when you're behind and you're down by 14 points and you're not within the friendly confines of that Matt LaFleur offense. There's no illusion of complexity. You can't run play action in jet motion. And my question mark here is twofold. One, a lot of quarterbacks and a lot of teams can look very good when you're ahead and when you have run-pass options, when you can run play action, when the defense doesn't know what's coming. I think if you go and look very closely at the Kevin Stefanski-led Cleveland Browns through this year, you can get a very good glimpse of that. When Baker Mayfield has been able to be kind of kept under wraps and the defense doesn't know what's coming and they can use a lot of play action, they can run the ball, they can use a lot of motions, they can do a lot of different things, that Browns offenses look pretty good. When they went up against Pittsburgh and got down early and Baker had to try to throw them out of a hole and try to win them a game, no chance. That was a completely different offense. And I'm not saying that's the exact same thing with Green Bay. In fact, we have some proof against Detroit that Green Bay was able to get into a hole early and kind of dig themselves out of it and still win that game comfortably. But this was a much better team. They got down in a hole. They were down, 31-10. They had to go out and they had to kind of throw their way back into it. And they couldn't do anything. And that's what I'm more concerned about. It's not like, they, rallied and came up short. It was punt, over and over, 3 and outs, just brutal offense where they couldn't execute at any single level. And that's not what you want to see when things don't go according to plan. You want to see your players overcome adversity. You want to see them go out and win one-on-one matchups and try to get back in that game. And this is a little bit of a trend now. Not a trend on this season, but we saw the same thing to some extent. I think the NFC Championship, they actually mounted a little bit of a comeback, way too little, way too late, but at least they got some things going on offense. Devontae Adams beat Richard Sherman deep on the deep ball on the right side of the field. You saw some things like that, but earlier in the season, especially against the 49ers and the Chargers, this same sort of thing happened. They got down against a good team. They got out of Matt LaFleur's system, and they looked completely lost on offense. And I'm talking about in those 3 games, they're at about exactly 600 yards combined. The Chargers game from last year, the 49ers regular season game from last year, and this game against the Bucs, about 600 yards in 3 games, right around exactly 200 yards in all 3 of those games on offense for a full 4 quarters. So this is a major concern that I have is if you're going to face these very good teams as time goes on and you get into the playoffs and things like that, if another team gets up 14-0 and you have to abandon what you're doing and you can't do some of this, great Matt LaFleur motion and some of the stuff that he does, again, with that illusion of complexity and, kind of scheming people open, that stuff doesn't always work as well when the other team knows that you're going to pass and they're in, obviously, pass situations and they're in nickel and dime defenses. They're covering off. They're not going to buy any of your crap up front. So you just got to go out and execute, and Green Bay hasn't been able to do that. So that's concern number 1. Concern number 2, the offensive line. Now, that may seem a little bit harsh because this offensive line was glorious through the first 4 weeks of the season before kind of shitting the bed in week 5, if we're being honest. They looked awful against Tampa Bay. They looked great through the first 4 games. So where do you come out on that? Well, Minnesota, no Danielle Hunter. They just got Yannick Ngakoue. It was not a very good Vikings defensive line and defensive front. Green Bay blocked it up well. Detroit doesn't have a very good defensive front. New Orleans, they got Cam Jordan, but they were a little banged up. They didn't have their full complement of players. And then Atlanta, Grady Jarrett, great player. And I thought, he won a couple one-on-ones, especially against Lucas Patrick. But for the most part, they contained him. But Tack McKinley was out in that game. Dante Fowler's their next best rusher. They, faced very little resistance in 4 games from, the front fours that they faced in those first 4 games. Totally different against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Jason Pierre-Paul and Shaq Barrett and Ndamukong Suh, they ate Green Bay's offensive line's lunch all day long, and that was it was really scary to see just how leaky they were across the offensive line. Lucas Patrick struggled. Elton Jenkins allowed his first sack of his career. When David Bakhtiari went down, it was game over. I mean, it was already game over, but seriously game over at that point. Rick Wagner wasn't up to the task at left tackle. Billy Turner had a really tough game. So how good is this offensive line going to be able to mold together against tougher defensive lines? That's the second question that I think needs to be answered. Again, I don't want to jump to too many conclusions over one game, but that was easily the best front that they faced, and they failed that test. I don't know if you can fail a test with flying colors, but if you can, that's what they did. Number 3, pressure on defense. So I think this is probably my 1A concern, if I'm being honest, is we have not seen the same level of pressure on defense from Kenny Clark and Zadarius Smith and Preston Smith, Rashawn Gary, Kingsley Keke. We've seen it in flashes, especially from Zadarius Smith, but nowhere near with the level of consistency that we saw, especially to end the year in 2019. This is a team that, simply put, cannot achieve its goals if they don't get the performances, especially out of Zadarius and Kenny, and better pressure from their front 7. Period. This has got to be a staple of this team. It can't even be a good pass rush. It has to be a great pass rush if this team really wants to accomplish their goals and be as good as they can be. Because going into this season, I tweeted it out and I'll own it again. I thought Rashawn Gary, Preston Smith, Zadarius Smith, and Kenny Clark could be the best pass rushing unit in the NFL. And I don't think I was being hyperbolic in saying that. I legitimately believe that they had the talent to do that, and they've looked nothing like that through the first 5 games of the season. Against good O-lines, against bad O-lines, it did not matter. They have not had the same level of success. And again, if they want to be a Super Bowl contender, that pressure has to come. It's got to come from Z. It's got to come from Kenny. Rashawn's got to step up, and Preston needs to play way better than what he has through the first 5 games of this season. Number 4, speed on defense. And I mentioned this in my breakdown. I did like 4 different breakdowns for the podcast and this and a couple of radio shows, so I'm forgetting which one's which. But the speed on defense for me was one of the most biggest differentiating factors between the Bucs game and the Bucs defense and the Packers defense, and just in that game as a whole. Tampa flying to the football, aggressive, physical. I'm not, again, just talking about 4.340 speed. I'm talking about game speed, rallying to the football and making plays. And Green Bay was the exact opposite of that. They have to find an identity. They have to play faster. Rob Gronkowski, they made him look fast on plays, and he's been one of the slowest players in the league this season. It's not like Ronald Jones is this breakaway running back. He goes for 100 yards. Like, they have got to be better. They've got to play with better overall team speed. They've got to diagnose things quicker, and they just have to be better overall on defense. And that brings me to my 5th and final one. And simply put, it's Mike Pettin. I think we're at the point now where there's legitimate concerns as to how good of a defensive coordinator is Mike Pettin. And can he really get this group turned around and functioning as a full-fledged championship caliber defense? It may not need to be a top 8 defense, but it needs to be a top 10, top 12 defense. Again, if this Packers team wants to have Super Bowl aspirations, and right now they're nowhere near that. I'm not breaking any news here, but they have the talent on this defense. Could there be some pieces that could fit better? Yes. Do I think they're going to get maybe even better when a Christian Kirksey and a Kamal Martin come back? Yes. Do I think that Kenny Clark, Preston Smith, Zadarius Smith need to play better than what they've shown through the first, quarter plus of the season? Yes. But there is still a tremendous amount of talent on this team. And Something has to give. Either the talent that they acquired, because listen, first round pick Darnell Savage, major free agent signing in Adrian Amos, those are your safeties. First round pick Jair Alexander, basically first round pick Kevin King, those are your top 2 corners. Second round pick Josh Jackson, right there as well. Top 50 pick Josh Jackson. All right, I know they've ignored the inside linebacker group. I'm going to ignore it now as well because it doesn't help prove my point. Outside linebackers, Preston Smith, Zadarius Smith, 2 major free agent signings. Rashawn Gary, top 15 pick. Interior of the defensive line, Kenny Clark, first round pick. Dean Lowry just got the contract extension. Whether it's free agent dollars, whether it's re-signing your own players to big money deals, or whether it's going out and spending top 50 picks on players, this defense is loaded with them. And now it's put up or shut up time. And whether that means they got the wrong players, and that's held against, the front office, or whether that means that they don't have the right coaches to get the most out of these players, that's a possibility too. But something has to give because they put a ridiculous amount of money, time, effort, energy, and resources. I guess even inside linebacker, you could make the case for Christian Kirksey as well. And I don't necessarily think that Chris Barnes is the issue here. So they've got the talent on this defense. Again, it's put up or shut up time. They've got to play better. That does it for me. Those are my 5 concerns. I don't mean this to be gloom and doom. I think this is a very talented Packers football team, but if they want to reach their peak, if they want to be a Super Bowl caliber team, if they want to beat good teams in the playoffs, those are the 5 questions that they have to answer between now and week 17 so that they can be prepared for the challenges that await when the playoffs come. Thanks for joining me. I'm Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. Make sure to check out our daily Pack-A-Day podcast wherever you get your favorite podcasts today with Dan, Matt, and Janelle. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.